Alright, I'm back with another video. On this one, I'm going to be covering the conversion I'll be doing on my vehicle. I haven't seen anyone on YouTube, so I figured I'd make it and, maybe help out some people in the future if they ever do this conversion. So, as anyone has seen any of my previous videos, on this car, it's D16 Z6, fully built, CCS block, H-beam rods, bicycle pistons, busy cam, SuperTech valve train, and I was using the CC hydro transmission from HMO, and I've been having issues with them for the last couple of years. I keep breaking them, and no one seems to make a diff for it. Because it utilizes B-series axles. I'm using actually one DC axle and one DA axle, and using the CC intermediate shaft. And I keep blowing up the diffs. And this transmission here is just the US tranny out of EK, and that one utilizes the D-series axle, so one's short and one long axle, because I blew up both of my ZC hydraulic transmissions, so I decided to stick that in there for now, and drove around, and it held up for maybe 10 to 12 pulls on the street, and I lost second, and third is being kind of a pain to get into, and it started making a horrible noise. So the conversion I've been wanting to do for a long time is D2B, but not just a D2B conversion. I wanted to be doing a D2B all-wheel drive conversion on the car. Yep. So I'm gonna be using the all-drive transmission out of a 97 Honda CR-V, along with all the rest, the drive shaft, viscous coupler, rear diff, trailing arms, axles from the RT four-wheel drive wagon, which I have ordered already from HMO, and I have inside here. Let me just go to the next clip and show you guys. So here's the stuff that I ordered from HMO. It's just inside my little shed garage thing right now. Like I said, I picked all, like, the drive shafts and the coupler. The viscous coupler is just RT four-wheel drive. Then I got the 97 CR-V transmission, came with a starter and the transfer case. He didn't have any shift cables or the box, but I ended up finding a guy online, or he actually messaged me on Craigslist, because I had a post for a motor that I was selling, and I ended up trading this along with intermediate for it. So that worked out, and here's the trailing arms I'm going to be using. They came with axles, but I'll probably replace them. I know I'm going to replace them, not probably. These are kind of junk. They're old. Who knows how many miles. I just get some fresh parts in there. Here's the diff. And on this guy, I'm going to be getting rid of this whole top bracket. I'm probably not going to be using any bushings on it. It's just going to be hard mounted. I have an idea. I've seen quite a few other images and how people have done it, such as like Epic Tuning. And that's kind of one of the guys that really inspired me to do this conversion and try to get into it. So I'm going to be making a whole rear cross member to mount that guy in. I'm going to be eliminating the fuel tank where it sits right now in the vehicle, and I actually have a fuel cell on the way, along with also the clutch that I'm going to be using, because I'm doing the adapterless D2B conversion on this. So I will be I'm going to have to have some billet plates welded in some of these locations and some of these holes filled in. So I go drill and tap the bolt holes for the motor, so the motor directly bolts onto the transmission. And I had also ordered a new twin disc clutch. It's the competition clutch for B series, and it uses the B series flywheel with D series crank holes drilled into it. I'm waiting for that guy to come in. The fuel cell, haven't decided how I'm gonna route the fuel lines, if I'm just gonna go back straight into the factory hard line, just from the fuel cell to the factory fuel lines, or if I'm just gonna run aftermarket fuel line all the way from the fuel cell to the motor. So that I still haven't decided, but I still got a lot of work to do. But yeah, here's the stuff, and the first thing I'm gonna do is start taking this guy apart. First thing's gonna be, I'm gonna be removing the transmission, flywheel, clutch, all that stuff. I'm probably just gonna pull out the whole motor, as a matter of fact. I don't even know what I'm saying that. But yeah, I'm gonna pull out everything, because I gotta get this engine, the D16, made up to that transmission first. Because I've also read there might be some pan modifications I have to do in order to clear the transfer case on the CRV. I don't know if it'll be similar to the all-wheel drive D series transmission, which you have to use the older D16A6 pan. But I'll find out once I cross that line. But for now, I'll be removing everything, taking it all apart. Then I'll be updating you as I go. But yeah, next time you'll see this, it'll be all in pieces. I got the motor pulled out of the car. It wasn't too hard, just besides, for some odd reason, the passenger side axle would not want to come out of the transmission. But after a lot of prying and hammer, it came out. But the motor's out. Got it on the hoist. And now what I'm going to do is just separate the engine and the transmission, and just put up the CRV transmission up to it, just so I can get an idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. Okay, I've gone and unbolted my D16 tranny off of my D16 Z6 engine, and she's sitting over here. And right now I have the CRV transmission bolted up. It is below the starter, and it's supposed to go into the motor, but over here there's no material to go into. So what I'm gonna do in this case is I'm gonna weld that hole. I'm gonna take my Sharpie before I do this. Actually, I'm gonna Sharpie all the way down on the overlap of the transmission. How it's overlapping, I'm gonna Sharpie that, and I'm going to make a cross line just so I reference where the bolt needs to be, so I know where I need to fill in, like this hole. I'm going to have one of my friends do that stuff because I don't TIG weld, but I'm going to do that. So on this one, I'm going to have that filled, and I'll be drilling and tapping the transmission to hold the 17 bolt, because I will actually notch this or open it up and drill it all the way through. So the bolt head's going to sit here, and it's going to be threaded into this, and I will have to repeat the same thing with the bottom as well. So that's how I'm going to take care of the front side. And for the back side, I'll be doing something similar, but this one already bolts into the transmission, or it should, but there's a big gap here, and I'm just going to Sharpie it as well, and probably we're gonna have to cut a piece of billet and put it in there and weld it into place, drill it and tap it, and after that's done, we should have a D16 Z6 engine mating to a 97 Honda CRV all-wheel drive transmission. Okay, so that takes care of that issue. There's other problems I'm gonna be running into. Obviously, the mount. No one makes a mount for this. To my knowledge, I don't know if anyone's actually done a D16 with a all-wheel drive transmission, B series all-wheel drive transmission, and an EF. I've seen it in EGs, EKs, even DCs, but I haven't seen it. I've looked around, but I haven't been able to find one. So what I'm probably gonna do here is I'm gonna build, because all this is flat, all the bolt holes, they're in the same height. So I'm probably gonna take just 1/4 inch plate and cut it out and just drill the holes, and I'll probably weld some studs so I could take this other mount that I have, and I'll probably end up positioning it over the 1/4 inch, whichever direction I have. I found this one's gonna be working the best for my application. It's actually a rear mount for an EK, but I'm not 100% sure if it's gonna work. I hope it does, because I would like to keep my billet mounts, because I was running the Hasports in mine, but we'll see. And yeah, that'll be taken care of once it's in the car. Also, another issue that is gonna have to be addressed is gonna be the thermostat housing, because it's hitting on the transmission. So that's gonna be one issue. The other one's gonna be making adapter to run the intermediate. Right now I just stuck my CC intermediate shaft, so I'm gonna have to space it off and use the CRV intermediate that I got over here. I was just goofing around and seeing how off it would be if I stuck my ZC, and it's quite a bit still. So I'm gonna do that bracket, but next thing I'll mark it out and I'll put it off and start filling the holes. One of the things that need to be addressed is going to be installing the CRV shifter box and cables. And this one I've gone and cleaned it, and I've sanded the shifter itself because it was rusty, and I sprayed it just like a semi-gloss black. It's my favorite stuff. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and remove the console around the shifter and the e-brake, and also the one around the stereo, because I'm gonna have to run the cables either hopefully under the carpet. I could tuck them underneath, and I'm gonna have to also make a hole, which is gonna be kind of tricky because I do have my brake proportioning valve right under that center console, because you see the brake lines are running under it, because I have a brake line tuck and wire tuck, fuel line tuck, so everything's kind of underneath. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and remove that stuff and see what I gotta do. So I'm inside my Civic, and I removed the consoles, and I've gone and put the shifter right in the location of the old one, and kind of looking around what I have to do, and one of them is going to be I'm gonna have to cut this out because it's protruding and it's coming in contact with the box and not letting it seat all the way down and move forward as much as I need it to. So I'm gonna have to cut that flange off and weld this hole shut. I have some sheet metal, so I'll trace it out and cut it out and weld it on there. And another thing is I'm gonna have to also remove this bracket that holds the front of the console on, because it's also interfering with the front of the shifter box. So what I'll probably have to do is probably rig some up for the console to bolt onto. Maybe I was just kind of thinking of running a self-tapper, and it'll just tap into the front, because this is actually going to be sitting right where this bracket is. But I'll figure some out for that later. But yeah, from the looks of it, cut that and basically cut out a piece of metal, weld it all up, and I should be able to hopefully make a hole somewhere around here. Man, I really don't want to remove the carpet. But yeah, the way I'm looking at it, I'm gonna have to. Because the hole's gonna have to be red around this area, and I'm gonna try to make a template of this because I want to utilize this rubber grommet. I've seen a lot of people just hole saw a hole for the cables, or they'll do it up on the firewall. But like I said, right there is my proportioning valve, if you can kind of see it at the bottom of it, and the lines are right under it, and there's a lot going on, so I'm gonna have to make it right here. So I guess I'm gonna pull the carpet, or maybe cut it. I'll think about it, but I'll probably pull it because I don't want to cut it. But alright, and I'll update you once I get this guy cut and I get a piece cut out for it right before I weld it. Alright, so I've gone and cut out the lip for the shifter boot. I just use a Sawzall blade, cut it off, and I actually got a pretty clean cut, so I just ended up using that to trace out the template for the metal. And it sits on there fairly nice. So I'm just gonna wire wheel it, tack it in place, and I also have some seam sealer that I'm just gonna put around it and just put some spray paint over it so it doesn't rust or anything. Then after that, I still have to cut the hole up here for the shifter cables to go through, and I still haven't made the template, so I'll do that next. Okay, so I've gone and welded the hole for the little shifter back. I just cut that piece out, tacked it in place, then used some seam sealer along the edge and on the old shifter holes, and also cut a hole pretty rough, but there's a rubber grommet that's going to go in there, and I'm probably going to use the seam sealer on the grommet and just have it permanently affixed to the floor. So next thing I'm going to do now, I already have the holes also, as you noticed, drilled out for the shifter. So all I got to do now is I'm going to wipe it off, put some semi flat black, it's my favorite stuff. I'm going to put it on the floor and let it dry, then I can put the shifter and the boot in place. And after that, I'll be done on at least on the front inside of the car. I'm gonna have to cut the rear spare tire well out for the fuel cell, because I'm just gonna run like probably a bead rolled flat sheet of steel back there. I'm not sure if I'm gonna tack it or if I'm just gonna rivet it in place. We'll figure out once the fuel tank gets here. It should be in here, or should be here this week, so I'll wait for that. But yeah, I'm gonna spray this and take a photo of how it looks when it's done. I just got the floor sprayed. That's just to keep it from rusting, hopefully. But also another thing I want to show you is what I had to do to the center console to make it fit. I had to notch it out for the cables. I used my my air saw, but I still have to go over it with a file because it's kind of rough on this end. But yeah, I had to do that because the cables come out the front, which this will be placed right over it that way, and so it has a bit of room for the cables. And also, to get it to sit down all the way, I had to cut the side of it, a good portion of it off, and just that little small corner right here. Just so it would sit, the center console would sit all the way down on this. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna give this a quick wash, just because there's just a bunch of crud from cutting it. I'm gonna wash that off, and I'm gonna install it for the last time, hopefully. But yep, I'll show you how it looks like when it's all in. Alright, so the shifter's in for the last time. It's all bolted on, and I slid the center console plastic over it, and she fits under it pretty good, so I'm pretty happy with it. And now what I'm doing is I've gone and turned the car around and jacked it up, and I've removed the fuel tank, seeing as the diff is going to be taking up the same area as the fuel tank was. And I've also removed one of the trailing arms, because I don't know if you ever heard, but yeah, the trailing arms aren't exactly the same, so I'm trying to decide if I'm gonna graph the all-wheel drive trailing arm hub onto the Civic one. I'm not quite sure on that, but yeah, you can see all the room the fuel tank frees up underneath the car, which if my friend Ken today, he said we'd be moving my car to his shop, where he has actually a 2-post lift. So hopefully we do that. Just probably stick on the arm on there just to move it. But yep, obviously this one's mine, my old one, and this is the RT wagon. And if you can notice, the wagon one is actually 2 inches longer, almost 2 inches longer. I'm not exactly on the measurement. I have to make a jig to hold this one, and basically when I make that jig, I just got to make this arm fit on that jig is what I think I'm gonna end up doing. So I'm gonna end up cutting it down, and also on top where the upper control arm or camber kit goes in, actually I have to change that too, because it's shorter on that one while this one's longer, and it's also at a more severe angle just because of like how the longer arm has changed the geometry of the suspension. And there's also this the LCA sits right here on the RT four-wheel drive trailing arm, versus on the Civic front-wheel drive trailing arms, it sits over here. The slot is about over here, right under where the axle would be. And I've seen people like graph this or take this whole center section and weld it into the Civic one, but with you doing that, I don't know if they're having any issues with the axle binding up or hitting the coilover or the strut or whatever they have in their car. So I think I'm going to run that. And also the problems with running this and having that LCA sit further back is that it's also going to screw with your coilover and just generally everything. So like I said, I want to jig it all, but what it would end up doing is, seeing as this needs to be further back, it needs to be pushed back, and then it could offset or angle the coilover. So you would have to angle the top hat as well. So in order to do that, I probably just, I don't know, cut the area. So I think removing the spot welds would be too hard. Just probably cut it, tilt it, weld it all back up. But yeah, I think one of the next steps is going to be, I gotta build a jig here, and I just gotta throw an arm on this so we can move it to my buddy's shop, where we're gonna put it up on the lift, and I guess start fabbing up some parts. But I'll update you then.